for the first presentation by Ross, I didn't let him introduce himself because he will get to do that just right now. So Ross is the Plant Select Program Manager. I guess you'll introduce yourself. Sorry, I didn't write down your title on my agenda, but he's going to talk about Plant Select, and I asked him to specifically talk about the western slope of the world so that we don't need to know about all that Front Range stuff. Just kidding. I know there's Front Range people on here, but we're really excited to hear Ross's presentation on Plant Select. So take it away, Ross.
Hey, thank you so much for the introduction, and I'm so glad to be here today. We're working on some things that are really big, and I hope that my talk will inspire a lot of ideas and thoughts about things. I'm going to quick share my screen, see how this goes.
That's perfect.
Is it perfect? Okay, let me see now how I can how I get to see things. All right, I think this will work. So anyway, I do have to go through what is Plant Select. You know, Plant Select has been providing plants to the Colorado and the region since 1997. Let me get my advance going. And we are a collaboration of Denver Botanic Gardens, Colorado State University, and the horticulture industry. And we rely on all three of those heavily for new plants, studies, and then of course the horticulture industry to bring their expertise on growing them and then actually having them available. We have over about 103 licensed propagators across the country. We're continually growing it, and I put this slide up so people that have been familiar with Plant Select realize that it's big, it's national, it actually goes into British Columbia and Europe. So it's growing, and I think that there was a point about 7 years ago when I became the director of Plant Select that there were discussions about going national, and I thought, oh, this is crazy, what are we doing? But it didn't take me long to realize it's really either grow or die, because obviously nurseries are closing because the property value is more than the business, and the offspring or the next generation of nurserymen or kids of those nurserymen are not really wanting to go into the business. So we need to expand, and that's what we're doing. And this is sort of where my journey started, and where it's come now is with this gentleman here, Dr. Alan Taylor. Wonderful man. I've heard about him for years. My career has been involved with, I had my own landscape business, gardening, maintenance from 95 till 2000 something. I wasn't ever ISA certified, but I took the certification for City of Fort Collins to be certified to prune. But I wasn't into big trees, and that wasn't my game. But I've known of Dr. Alan Taylor since I worked at Denver Botanic Gardens for about 7 years. And he used to take people on trips and go plant hunting and exploring down south and things like that. Now, he is the brother-in-law of Panayiotis, and I mention that because it's weird how all these relationships are tied together. He is probably the person that brought Panayiotis into horticulture, which is really interesting. You might also know Alan Taylor by the way of Taylor Sunburst, Pinus contorta, which is fantastic. I put a little description up there. You all know it, but a picture of the street shot of the one in Fort Collins that's so readily available. Now, I should put into the chat this link. You could lift up your phone right now and actually take a screenshot or go to the link that the QR code has. Let me just see if I can quickly do this and put it into the chat, because this is the work that we have been working on, or I've specifically been working on for a long time. Oh, shoot. Everyone in the meeting, Control V. Let me know if you can't see it.
It came through. Let me try opening it. It looks like it's not the right link. That's the Zoom link.
Oh, shoot. Well,
I can pull it up while you're talking.
Okay.
I'll get it.
I'm sorry about that.
Nope.
Yeah, if somebody else could do that, that would be great. So at any rate, when you go to this, I came around to realizing that that Alan had several, over 50 or even 100 named cultivars or selections of different plants, from Arctostaphylos to Arizona cypress to oaks and a lot of other things that he was interested in. And I realized he had been sending all this plant material since the early 2000s to a nursery, Heritage Seedling Nursery in Oregon. And I went up and visited them. And lo and behold, they have about 35 of those plants in their stool blocks that that are mature enough to capture a lot of scion off of and then re-wholesale. So bringing plants into the market is very challenging because there is a problem with, um, does the grower take the risk of growing all these plants and hopefully they sell, or do I get orders together and then bring it to the nursery and say, I need all these? So Plant Select really needed some help. Now, Tim Buchanan, I remember seeing his Choice City Select, his trees, he introduced way back in like 2012. I was sitting in on a meeting and he was like, oh, we got this bulletproof oak. And it just was so funny because I thought, I'd never heard of this. And it's still a little bit challenging to find, but it is coming. So when you go to these links on this page, you will find the descriptions of these plants with some pictures. And you're going to see some pretty cool things. These plants that are in the stool blocks, like the one on the left is King Canute, and then the middle one is Tinny. These are just different, all the different varieties of leaves that we can bring into our forestry, urban area and observe. And we need to do this because things are changing. This one is Estelle, and it's known for its red fall color, Gamble oak. These are the folks that are involved with this process. On the left is Mark Krautman, the owner, the previous owner of Heritage Seedling, and then of course Alan Taylor and his notebook. And we've documented all these things, and we have them putting them together to chase down the original points, to figure out how they're growing in our environments, and then trying to bring them to market. And luckily, Plant Select was able to secure some funding for contract growing. And we went up and picked up all these plants that were grafted onto a rootstock that we kind of selected to be grafted onto, so that we know what we have for a tree at the beginning. We brought Tim Buchanan, Freddie, all up there to take a look at a lot of different nurseries. This is Coonsey Nursery. They are real workhorses and just down the road from Heritage Seedlings. So they have been trialing in their fields and in their production line most of the Alan Taylor trees, and they're learning which trees do well for them in production and which trees don't. It's a long learning process. And when you listen to like talks from J. Frank Schmidt, they will tell you it takes about 25 years to bring a tree from concept or from initiation, one plant, all the way into market. That's a long time. We got a little bit of a benefit by having the stool blocks full at Heritage Seedling of these plants, so we had to jump on the game. But this is Tyler Coonsey, who is showing us how they grow their trees in the root maker containers. And then we also toured Bailey Nursery, and I put this slide in because I'm excited and terrified at the same time for the place we are in our industry, because technology is moving quickly. This is the tissue culture lab on the left that we observed, and they can ramp up numbers of plants very quickly. On the right is actually Jeff Stoven. This is Allison O'Connor's brother who works there, and he's showing us a machine that they come in with cuttings and they actually just dump them on a conveyor belt. And this one-arm machine comes out and picks them up and transplants them in the correct depth and, root side down or cutting side down into any kind of cell tray you'd like, 170 cells or 90 cells, whatever that is, and they can do it with TC as well. The technology is so quick, and then they have starts of all those plants that they can sell out as liners or grow up into larger plants themselves. But think about how quickly our technology is changing, and really our industry, most of us are in the dark ages. I mean, I still know from working at Fort Collins Wholesale for 5 years that they are still using DOS programs for their orders, and that's just insane. Um, but this talk is about inspiring ideas. And for Plant Select, I talk to master gardeners, I talk to retailers, I talk to landscape professionals like designers, and I'm faced with, and I also am a target for like native plant societies that are thinking only native plants and these kinds of things. Firewise, what about poisonous plants? What about poisonous plants for my pets? And I feel like Plant Select is a nexus or a collection of a lot of questions, and we have access to a lot of different industry people that really have to make me think about what are we doing. And I'm hoping that everybody else, when you're walking around outside, is asking themselves, why is it like this? What are we doing? What are we creating? And about 3 years ago, I think it was now, I showed this slide as what does our future of our landscapes look like? And lo and behold, this is a house that when I was working at Denver Botanic Gardens in 2008, I had a friend who had their kid on my soccer team because I was coaching, and they said, "Hey, Ross, can you come give us advice on our house?" And it was only a couple of years ago or a few years ago that somebody called me up and said, "Hey, they actually took your advice, Ross, and you should come see this place. I'm adding on to their designs." And this is their backyard. It used to be just Kentucky bluegrass, and they are butted up next to an open space. And I said, well, you need like an infinity yard. So when you come off the back porch, you have a prairie that blends into a natural landscape, and it just makes it look like it's all yours. But really, you only have your backyard. But it's a wonderful view. And they took that advice, and they have native grasses in the back 40. And I think a lot of HOAs are sort of following this model. Unutilized turf grasses need to be native plants. Then you have water-wise lawns like dog tuff or buffalo grass. If in the future we actually have yards, you might have a vegetable garden, pollinator gardens. That's a whole nother group that is different than the native plant people. It's amazing how these people are really focused in and dialed into what they want. And then they're bringing it and demanding it from the market. And Plant Select is trying to provide all these different things. At any rate, it makes me think. And then crevice garden you can see in there. I think crevice gardens are actually a fire-wise garden. And they are so much fun. They're actually water-wise. They're a pollinator. And they allow you to bring plants in from around the world and experience different flowers that normally you wouldn't see. But the biggest thing in this picture, I think, for urban forestries are where the trees are. So what are we doing today that is going to be around in 60 years? It's not perennials really, unless it's like peony or something, but it's shrubs like lilacs, and it's trees. So where are we placing our trees, and what trees are we selecting? Right now, we are probably at the most important time of our lives to choosing trees for our environments in the future. And as urban foresters, you all have the biggest challenge of this, because nobody knows what to expect. And I'm just going to share some of the thoughts that I have. Now, I was raised in Denver, and I used to come to Fort Collins in the 80s and go, who would want to live in this cowpoke town? Because back then it was completely different. Half of downtown was boarded up. But this is the dream. And this is kind of what people moving in want to see. This is a healthy city. This is really what it looks like. Mature trees offering eco services that are, just that they offer a lot for mental health. They offer a lot for storm runoff. They offer it for heat island effects. Trees are an important infrastructure of the city. And I never realized this. When I saw the bumper stickers in the early 2000s that said trees are the answer, I was like, come on, we live in the plains, short grass prairie. This is ridiculous. But I've attended enough meetings since like 2005 with ISA folks and city folks to realize that where there are houses and streets, where usually streets go with houses, you have to have trees. And it's interesting to think about trees out west because people out east are cutting them down. And I think that's one reason Doug Tallamy is actually like, you need to grow more trees. Well, shoot, it's easy to grow trees out there. It's a challenge here. And it's harder to live in an exposed environment like the plains. So we actually need trees. And he was kind of floored when I met him that I demanded everybody be planting trees because of the infrastructure it offers your city. So, where are we with this image? Is this what we're going to have in 80 years or 60 years? That's kind of where I go because, you can go online and the University of Maryland is doing a great job of putting together these climate analogs. So, what I've done here is I typed in Grand Junction, Colorado, and what will that look like in 60 years? And you can just Google that link and open it up and check it out. It's interesting. So you can see the Grand Junction is going to best climate analog is going to be Washington, Utah, which is actually just the town north of St. George, Utah. So if you've been down there, that's a completely different world. They grow trees that we can't grow. Um, but you can go in and look at that. But then think about, okay, so what does that mean? I'm reading the selected city Grand Junction for the future. It says with high emissions, which nowadays seems like we're on track for. Colorado is expected to be 10 degrees higher, warmer, and 15% wetter. That's kind of interesting. But what does that really mean? And then the winters are going to be 9 degrees higher and 15% wetter. So you bring up what that means is right now 15% more. Grand Junction is getting really an annual average of 9 inches a year. So they're going to get 1.4 inches more per year. That's not much. But what does it say about our extremes in terms of are we going to have more or less freeze thaws through the year? That's really what's challenging on plants. Think about warm, dry winters as being more challenging on plants. But look at this, it's predicting more wet. So it's just interesting and to think about what are we planning. But you can get on Google Maps and go and say, where is Washington, Utah? Well, I picked a place outside of that area to a state park because I want to see what's outside the native environment there. And this is what it looks like. Just shrubs and grasslands. So what does the town look like right now? What are they planting? New Mavericks. I think they're just coming new to the west and down. And so this is what 3 years ago they planted and had some sort of a mature plant landscape, and they've got some palms in there. But is this what Fort Collins or is this what Grand Junction will look like? Or maybe this, and maybe it already does. It's just interesting. Now, how do you plan for having mature trees in 60 years that have to live through whatever we've got now to bring it to a landscape that may look like this? You can order really large plants, but I got one out of order here. I went to the other side. I went down south. I was just in Durango, and I wanted to know what it was looking like in 60 years. And it's actually going to be wetter as well, but also about 10 degrees warmer. I went on to look at what their annual precip was, and the USDA or the government facility didn't have any water precipitation measurements. And I wonder whether or not we're going to be facing that absence of data in the future. So it really means we got to be on our toes about what how we get information and what we're looking at and then evaluate it. But they were saying Clarksdale, Arizona. This is a new church down there. I just went and dropped the street view guy down, and this was what popped up. This looked like a landscape of mesquite and things like that. Here's what a planted landscape is. But what I think about a lot when I see these landscapes is there are no big, huge shade trees. And this is one of the things that got me thinking about Alan Taylor's stuff, because I'm, thinking that our technology ability will grow quickly, and especially with things like solar and energy and things like that. And in my days, when I was growing up, you always put a big tree by the house so you didn't have to have air conditioning. And I still don't have air conditioning. I also don't have big trees, but you open the windows at night, close them in the morning, and that's how it's been. But to think about landscapes with small trees is, I think, a big thing. And I think big trees maybe should only be planted in parks. And we'll get to what big trees are. This is Fort Collins. I put this in because this is where I started looking. And we're going to be looking at, where is this? Spearman, Texas. There's Spearman, Texas. There's their golf course. The trees are struggling. And when I think about water, even though it says we're getting wetter, it doesn't mean we're going to have access to more water. And if the population grows and things like that, we're going to be still limited with it. And 60 years from now, if we have huge trees and our kids can't afford to water them, it's expensive to cut them down. We're setting them up for a challenging point, kind of like we're in right now. And I think that small trees in residential areas are appropriate, or more appropriate, and maybe even further away from the house to save that space for solar. It may become more valuable than the big shade on top of it. But Alan's had been doing work for years on going to southern places. And you can see here that a lot of the trees that in the genetics that he's brought are from these hotter areas. And as we move into the future, I really think that, one, we need diversity. And if you try to go on the market now and you ask for diversity, it's a challenge, because, you know, accountants are stepping in, and, young kids are learning how to use Excel, and they look at the bottom line and say, Dad, why are we growing these weird things? I want to grow, we have to grow things that make money. And so the diversity really on the market is slimming when actually we need to be expanding it. Anyhow, you can see these. This is Tollgate Canyon. It's one of his gambles that supposedly turns red in the fall. Here's another one. If you went onto those links, you will find that these are trees for evaluation and plant select. This is Dolores River. Now, a lot of these trees, I found it really challenging when I was looking at them. I was excited. I heard trees and oaks and things like that. A lot of them are shrubs. They're not even trees, but they have a place and they are good for the environment, and they are unique and they are interesting. There are plenty of places for shrubs, and I think shrubs are the biggest bang for your buck. And if you have a shrubby oak, that's even better. Look at the blue leaves on this. It's spiny. I know this was living in the trials up here at Fort Collins Wholesale Nursery as of last year. I haven't been out there to see whether it's there this year, but you'll get all the information on it. This is it in nature, where he selected those genetics from. This is another tree, Tinny, one of my favorites. Now, tree nurseries are actually growing these, and they're staking them up, and they're growing them to 8 feet tall right away. And so they look like a tree. So they sell out of the nursery. And I've taken the stakes off in my house and at the trees I've planted, and I'm just seeing which way they grow, because there's a lot of weird sideways downward growing that is happening on these. But the leaves and the durability with low water of these plants is completely worth it. But not all of his trees are small. This is Eric the Red. And no, that's not a misspelling. That's actually by the town in Oklahoma where it was from. This is a complex hybrid of 3 different types of oaks, but it gets, in nature, 50 feet tall. So we'll see how big these things get. There's also another plant coming to the market here fairly soon. I think J. Frank Schmidt's going to put this one in their catalog this year, named Gila Monster. The story behind this is there's a population of these in Gila National Forest that's a gamble oak, kind of by leaf and by acorn, but it doesn't sucker. It doesn't grow like any kind of gamble oak here in Colorado. It gets 60 feet tall, and it's more like a bur oak. And there hasn't been any genetic analysis on it, but it sure feels like it's been hybridized with bur oak when bur oak were actually in the area during the last ice age. So Plant Select actually has been, there's a gentleman there with the cowboy hat on, Don Davenport from Plants of the Rio Grande, he harvested seed long time ago and from the roadside one tree here, and has been growing it in his nursery and then utilizing those acorns to grow those plants out. And we kind of specified that should be the rootstock for all the Allen Taylor oaks. So we supplied them, or Heritage Seedling purchased the acorns, grew out the rootstock, and they're grafting all the Allen Taylor oaks onto those. Whether they're shrubs or not, it's because there's really great compatibility. So we're tracking these things. And you all understand this, but I had to put it in. You're responsible for the largest, most valuable living structure in the urban ecosystem. And it floors me when a person like Freddie says, well, I don't know if we should be under Department of Parks or engineering. And it's like, wow, these are huge concepts that are interesting. But, think about your position, and you're in a position where you're supposed to provide these things, but I don't know that you have all the tools. And ever since Emerald ash borer came out, we're rethinking again, just like we did for the elms, diversity and what can grow here, and then compile on that the climate change. It's big. So then we have the timeline, of course, of bringing these new plants. How do you bring diversity quickly to trial and have in your municipality inventory to be able to evaluate which trees are going to be better and get more of? So here's one example of a tree that's Tim Buchanan actually brought in, and how these things happen is very interesting. Alan Taylor would run down, or Gary Epstein or someone would go down to 4th of July campground or wherever, that area of the Sandia on the east side of Albuquerque, that Sandia Mountains range, and they have these big tooth maples that are growing like sugar maples, really huge and beautiful. Bring them back to somebody like Scott who grows them out. And I have to say that one of the best things I see happening with Fort Collins Nursery and the Arbor Day trees is that it allows having an order from the municipality for Arbor Day trees is so important for selections, because what it allows Scott to do, for example, who's the propagator there, is to grow a ton of plants out, cull them out, and pick out the best ones for sale that people purchase, but also have a bunch there for kids to plant, because we know most of those won't survive anyway. But then what happens is the city ends up buying a bunch of those trees that he selected out, they plant them back out, they hybridize with the other plants in the city. So this one, Pearl Mountain, is theorized to be a hybrid between a sugar maple and a manzano maple, which is kind of the big tooth maple. It's very different, but we have to get it into service, or we have to get it out. So it's going to take this long, and you can see how that looks. What I realized too is how municipalities operate. Now, I worked at CSU on facilities, and what you do, or even DBG, you get a budget for a year, and that's what you have to work with. You have to spend it in that year, right? Well, if you want to buy a tree in 5 years so that you have it, it's a challenge. And so how does this work? You have an accountant. Now, my dad's an engineer, and he used to tell me a long time ago, accountants can kill people. And you're like, what? And it's the reason he say that is because they can value engineer things out that they don't understand or doesn't matter to them, but can be very dangerous where an engineer would see it. And it's the same thing with trees. Accountants don't see quality in trees, and you don't want a low bid going to poor quality trees because it costs you more. But that's hard to explain to an accountant. So this is my joke here. This was AI generated. Municipality person or an accountant talking to an urban forester, and they put them right in the middle of the tree. But it highlights how we do this process, and I never thought about it, that maybe it's our purchasing order issue that is reducing our ability to have diversity. So city foresters, limited access, limited yearly budget, you have to settle with the trees, on availability. You have growing interests of, you see all those things, replacing large quantity of trees. And growers, they have other problems. They have little incentive to do new trees, except what they've been growing in the past. They can't predict what buyers want because there's no annual procurement cycle. Now, this procurement cycle, Freddie brought up the fact, dealing with the accountant. He said, well, gosh, we have 5-year contracts with, Davy Tree or Swingle or whoever to prune the trees over 5 years. Why can't we have a 5-year contract for growing a tree? Well, all you have to do is just make a little change in your thought process. It's kind of like driving on Interstate 25. I hate that, but if you look at the passing lane or the far left lane, if your model is in your head that it's just a fast lane, traffic is slower than if you look at it as it's a passing lane, and you should actively be passing a person and then get back in the right lane. Let everybody else pass you. Same thing with accountants and looking at trees. Say, look, we're buying a seedling in year 1, and every year after that, we're servicing that seedling to become a tree. And we should probably share in the risk of growing that tree that the nurseries are doing right now. And all of a sudden, it kind of makes sense, because you have Davy Tree going out pruning trees, servicing them every year for 5 years. You could do the same thing with a nursery, just saying, I'm buying the tree the first year, and then every year after that, I'm going to put some money towards servicing that tree. And eventually, you should end up on a cycle where every year you're actually growing, you're finishing up buying the trees you ordered 5 years previous, and you're placing the order for the 5 years forward. That's how it would go. So I'm happy to announce that we're moving forward. Plant Select is moving forward with a supply chain and contract growing tree purchasing program. And it's going to feature smart contracts for municipalities. The plan right now is that it's not going to change anything how municipalities send out a bid, make sure it's fair and things like that. It'll be incorporated in there, and then change them into a smart contract. Then it'll geotrack the plants. So this is what's important, is we can track, if it started out correctly, the seed that's collected for the rootstock married with the scion. The tree comes with all that information as you grow it. As a matter of fact, you could have a QR code on a package at the end of the day, in the nursery even, that you show it, and it will show the mapping of all those components coming together over the years that it happened. Now let's think about, in 100 years, how important is that information going to be? It's going to be hugely important. All this stuff is downloadable to an Excel spreadsheet. You can keep it in your pocket, even if some software changes. It'll also track carbon footprint tracking. Think about nurseries and cities or city councils starting to think about, I'm buying trees based on their carbon footprint instead of really what they are. Genetic provenance tracking. That's hugely important. How do nurseries keep track of trees that are the same genus species? They don't want to make SKU codes for all these things, but they want to keep them together so they get watered correctly and appropriately. I'll be finishing up here really soon. I know that I was supposed to go till 9:40, but the genetic provenance I've come across in my lifetime, Boulder County wants plants that have genetic provenance from their county. Well, what if Larimer County says the same thing? You think the nursery is going to separate the two? They're going to grow the plant that works best for them, that has the most success and the highest profitability when it's sold out all across the board. But with a program like this, we're going to be able to keep track of those things. But the key is they're going to have to order them for the future. And they'll be, this is what I want on order. And it doesn't have to be a 5-year contract. It can be 1 year. It can be 2 years. If you're doing shrubs, even annuals. Data analysis and reporting, that'll be a big deal in the future, because you all will have that in your pocket in your inventory, your tree inventories and things like that. This is a big deal, and it's thinking about horticulture and purchasing in a different way. And you should be able to look for this rolling out sometime this summer. I think it's hugely important, and I think it's global in terms of, we want to know where our plants are from, and we want to know how they do in 100 years when we're gone. And it's our responsibility to start collecting this data and not just have it be like, well, Scott said it was from this one, or the nursery said it was from that one. Did they lose the tag? I don't know. But when you have things laid out and tracked year after year, the chances of things getting lost are less. And also it allows the issue to come up earlier in the growing of those plants to say, hey, we got a problem. And then you can stop the payments on that plant. Anyhow, this is what's the future. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you enjoy, and it inspired thinking. I don't know if I have any time for questions, but thanks for letting me speak.
Thanks, Ross. I did build in a little time for questions in there. We got a question from Stephanie, who is with the Book Cliff Nursery here in Grand Junction. She has a question about oaks, and she said, do you know anything about live oaks doing well here on the western side? She has a guy who's desperate to get one, and he brought in a sample to be identified and told us he's growing in his neighborhood, but he's wondering about a live oak opportunity.
Shoot, that's a Scott question. I think that live oaks could actually work out there. If they're talking, is it which live oak? Live oak is a broad range of things.
Right.
If it's Quercus fusiformis, I think that could be it, but it's not a huge tree. It's smaller. I had one growing for several years at my house, and it finally, you start to look at plants differently. Like, you say annuals. Well, they don't live here. Well, down in the equator, they're perennial. Well, you say this could be a 5-year annual. You know what I mean? Like, just enjoy it for 5 years. Joshua trees are the same sort of way. You got 8 years. That's it, before something will happen and it dies. And if it doesn't and the climate changes, then you've got something really special. And we should actually collect the genetics from those plants and bring them back. But I would say to bring it to Book Cliff, have Janet or Jeff or whoever's there, send them a picture to me, and let's get on it and take a look. Because if you've got something that's already growing there, that should be used more. And I do know that there are trees that are turbinella and hybrids of Alan Taylor oaks at the Greek church. Let me see. It's the
Greek Orthodox Church.
Yes, thank you. All around there. And, all those acorns still make it back into Scott's propagation. Every year he goes through there, he does that.
Rob Sharon. Oh, yeah, Rob found a tree. Go ahead, Rob.
I imagine, I think it's escarpment oak, Ross. I think Scott said, is it Sunshine Nursery in Oklahoma that might grow them?
Yeah.
But this one's been around, you can go back to 2008. So it's been there for a while. There's a handful of them, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's the tree.
Ross, you using this view was, you were talking Rob's love language there. He loves doing the street view.
Oh, it's the best. You can travel so fast. Yeah.
I bought some trees from Chelsea Nursery for where I work here at Western Campus in Junction, and we're getting a Plant Select Arizona Cypress is one of the ones I chose. So
great.
Excited to get that here. I'm not sure which one is coming, but I just wanted an Arizona Cypress.
Well, we'll see. It may be Crystal Frost. That's a zone 5. Then they have Blue Ice, which is not quite zone 5. And then there are a bunch of seedlings that are floating around, so they have varying colors and things like that. Now, I just drove through Sedona, and I was going to throw in a picture here of their median that was 2 feet wide, and they planted Arizona Cypress down the middle of them. It was hilarious. I don't think they have a city forester. It's nuts because they shouldn't have done that. That gets wide.
Anyone have any other questions for Ross? It was interesting sorry, I guess I'm going to go ahead, Rob, and then I'll throw my last comment in.
Just was going to say, if anybody is interested, we are bringing Scott's Gila Monster Gamble Oaks and his seedlings to be given away on the 26th at Lincoln Park. So if anybody's in the area and you want to try Gila Monster, they'll be there.
Yeah, I went to college in Northern Arizona and at NAU. And so we have oaks that are trees that we call Gamble oak all over Flagstaff area. So when I came to Colorado and they were calling this shrub oak, Gamble oak, it took my brain a while, but when it just clicked in my brain when you were talking about the Gila monster, which I have growing, I've got some seedlings from the Grand Junction Arbor Day, that was what I'm seeing in Flagstaff was the single stem tree form Gamble oak. And that's how it probably is or somehow related to the Gila monster. So it was just like this click in my brain because and to me, Gamble oak was a single stem tall oak, but not out here.
Well, I'll share a quick story with you if you don't mind about that Gila monster. And I am in the process of getting a description to J. Frank Schmidt about them. And I've been reaching out to the International Oak Society, Ryan Russell in particular, about naming this. Now, everybody said, and we've had lots of eyes look on it, David Solomon, Kelly Grumman, Scott, Alan Taylor. And they look at these Gila monsters and say, there's something different about this plant. It's not a shrub. It's got some other genetics. What are the genetics? And Jack Mays did a paper a long time ago on the hybrid oaks of Southern Colorado, or actually Northeast New Mexico. But there are definite hybrids of those two in Southern Colorado. And there's a name for it now, kind of like there is for the hybrid of Gamble and Turbinella. It's undulata. Now you also have Quercus mazii, which is the hybrid between Burr and Gamble. And it's not widely accepted or used yet. But the interesting thing is that's as far as Jack Mays's report went. And when I spoke with Ryan Russell, he was a little curious about how can you say that the Gila monster is actually that hybrid. And so right now I'm trying to go back, look at close-up pictures of all the branches and all the acorns and things like that to send to him to say, see, look, there's some hints or suggestions that this is the Burr oak genetics left over from the previous ice age when the Burr oaks actually moved west. And then, they retreated but left some of their genetics with the Gamble oaks there. And that's why they're so big. But you're saying even into Flagstaff is a big deal.
Oh, yeah. Yep. They were certainly, we'd call them Gamble oaks, and they were single stem large trees. Actually looked really like that photo of the Gila monster. So interesting. All right. Well, Ross, you're welcome to stay and listen to Heather's presentation, but we'll scooch over to Heather Listermann with the City of Glenwood Springs, recent graduate with a master's. Where is she? There she is. Take it away, Heather. Thank you so much for being willing to present again.
Thank you. Get my screen shared here. All right.
We are seeing your screen.
Awesome. So, now
we're seeing your computer screen.
Oh.
It's a lovely tree.
Oh, thank you. Fix that real quick.
I think everyone does want to know where that photo was taken, if that was yours.
It's not, no.
Oh, okay.
It's not. I'm not that cool. Let's see. Try that one. There we go. Is that working now?
It's working on it. There it is. Expanding municipal management.
Okay, great. So, little brief introduction into why I decided to go this route with some research for one of my graduate projects. The City of Glenwood Springs was a really grateful recipient of some IRA grant funding. We received $600,000 to expand our community forestry programming here. And that was to primarily maintain trees in our right-of-way areas and public spaces, and also to support some planting projects and some staffing and training. we did receive 200,000 in an advance the first year, which is great. And then, as everybody here is probably painfully aware, they did take funding or cancel that funding recently. And so up until we were kind of working with the USDN to figure out what the next steps were, up until April 2nd, when they sent out, or 1st, when they sent out the announcement that they were officially halted. So I started having, you know, some thoughts about how I could move forward with our urban forestry management programming in the future. And this is something I started to think about when we were building out the grant narrative, actually, was kind of building capacity in general for our city to help take care of trees. So I decided to look a little bit deeper into how cities in Colorado finance management of trees, how cities in Colorado take care of right-of-way trees, because I wanted to be able to go to our city council members and say, here, you know, we either have, you know, good reasons to move forward and ask for funding to take care of these trees, or maybe this is something that we can't balance as a small city of, you know, less than 12,000 people. So this project, my presentation here is about 30 slides long. What I'm going to do is I'm going to really quickly move through the first sections here, which is a literature overview talking about municipal tree management. This is all stuff that most of the people here are probably already fairly familiar with. And I'm going to spend a little bit more time talking about what the actual results from a survey that I sent out in January were, which, by the way, thank you to everybody that participated, because I sent it out to the Intermountain Urban Forestry Council, and I had a lot of great feedback from you guys. So I really appreciate your support and giving me some feedback there. As I said, the presentation was is reviewing challenges and opportunities related to right-of-way tree management in Colorado. And I also created this project as part of one of my graduate projects. For the purposes of this study, we identified right-of-way trees as trees that are located between the sidewalk and the street, or located within a tree well in the sidewalk, or within a utility easement, or within 10 feet of the curb, because some places we don't have those little hell strips built in yet. The reason that I looked into this, as I kind of already mentioned, is because it is challenging as our cities expand. We're building new infrastructure and creating, there's new developments coming in, and when trees aren't prioritized and planned for, it can be really detrimental. It's especially challenging for some cities where they don't have responsibility to take care of right-of-way trees, but they still require developers to put in right-of-way trees. So they're saying, hey, you have to do this, but also we have no plan for follow-up. The purpose of the entire project was to provide data for municipalities in Colorado for reference when we're making these urban forestry management decisions, by synthesizing the information from literature reviews related to right-of-way tree maintenance, along with the perspectives that are provided from the right-of-way tree management survey that I sent out in January. What I found from the literature review is that approximately 64% of municipalities assume legal responsibility for trees located in the right-of-way. This was based on research across the United States, so this is not specific to Colorado. Unfortunately, there isn't a lot of data that I was able to locate for Colorado specifically. So I was hoping that that right-of-way tree management survey would give us a little bit more insight. I also found that there's a pretty significant perception among residents that the government agencies should take responsibility for taking care of right-of-way trees. and that a lot of those studies were showing that when municipalities take an active role in the management of trees, it can lead to higher survival rates, and particularly in the initial years following planting. Some of the legal obligations for municipalities might include ensuring that trees do not pose safety hazards, performing regular inspections and conducting necessary maintenance activities. The absence of such can expose municipalities to liability claims, highlighting a necessity for proactive strategies and right-of-way management. Something in particular that I noted for my municipality is that there's some confusion around exactly what those legal obligations are, especially when you have vague municipal code related to the responsibility of right-of-way trees. So even though we have a municipal code here in Glenwood Springs that states that the adjacent parcel owners are responsible for those right-of-way trees, our legal advice that we've received is that we can still be held liable for tree failure if we're not at least policing it to some degree and having code enforcement officers touch base with our community members when a tree looks like it could potentially cause some serious damage. So just something interesting. Also from the research, there was I noted that there was some competing interests between utility departments in public easements where trees are undergoing pretty severe and frequent pruning, and that there's definitely a need for some collaboration between utility and forestry departments. The maintenance between the two can often lead to long-term health issues with trees. So some of the kind of brief steps here and moving forward to expanding management within our municipalities is to just first understand the economic value of your trees, conducting that tree inventory and knowing what their value is, and then prioritizing your maintenance needs based on the public safety and ecological benefits. I found from the literature I reviewed that that about 0.52% of your total municipal budget is what some of the researchers showed as being an adequate number for taking care of trees. And obviously that's going to vary still based on the inventory and the city size as well. But where budgets are not established, you can explore some alternative funding such as fees and banking systems or partnerships with nonprofit organizations and local businesses, or of course, grant funds. The research also showed that staffing, when you're hiring certified arborists and really having trained professionals on staff really does help to enable to make sure that we are conducting proper management, but also helps with community engagement as well. When we're able to talk to our community members about the trees and really give them accurate information about how to take care of their trees, there's just a higher likelihood that trees are going to make it. According to the literature, approximately 81% of municipalities report that funding is designated for tree care activities, but the budget size can be influenced based on available resources on an annual basis. Larger municipalities typically have a larger available budget than smaller communities, but smaller towns can also exhibit a higher per capita expenditure on trees, which is might sound strange, but you think about maybe small communities such as mine where we had some dependence on grants, and so we had a much higher per capita expenditure over the past year or so than we would normally. Some of the costs involved in right-of-way maintenance include planting, pruning, removal, treatment, infrastructure builds and repairs, administrative expenses, and when they're not budgeted for, the financial constraints end up leading to longer term deferred maintenance issues. And finally, some of the benefits of municipal management include, you know, helping to maintain and improve those ecosystem services that trees provide, along with the social benefits that trees provide. And I think, as probably every single person here already knows, when we're taking care of the trees, you know, there's just a higher chance of that they're going to make it. So on to the right-of-way tree care assistant, or right-of-way tree survey. I sent this out on January 28th, I believe. And I had about 51 people submit responses to this survey. Of those 51 responses, I was able to keep about 37 of those. I ended up omitting some of that data because people did not complete the entire survey. So there was some missing gaps there. And I wanted to make sure that when I was putting all of that information together, that there was, you know, high quality data. I did use Qualtrics. It was my first time sending out a survey with Qualtrics, which was really cool. It allowed me to use skip logic to try to make it easier so that when people were responding to the survey, they didn't have to answer, you know, 30 questions. They only had to answer the questions that were hopefully most applicable to them, which is essentially splitting this, the survey respondents into two categories. The first category is respondents that are indicating that the municipal code for their city or town, or even unincorporated municipality, places the responsibility of right-of-way tree care onto residents. So that would be parcel owners or adjacent parcel owners, but basically anybody besides that municipality. And of those 51, of that 51% of respondents, we found that 14 of those 18 respondents, which was the 51%, indicated that they had allocated budgetary resources for the care of trees. They may not necessarily have municipal code indicating that they take care of trees, but they are taking care of trees in some capacity. And that could be, you know, a utility department, it could be a parks department, it could be public works, and even in some cases, forestry. And as you can see here, the budget allocations, most of that funding was being spent in parks and recreation and public works. There was that smaller percent being spent on forestry, which is cool. I'm glad to know that there was that. And then of the funding that was noted there, there was at least one community that had between $100,000 and $500,000 budget for trees. Another community that had between 50 and 100,000, but the majority of these respondents, which was 7 respondents, had less than $50,000 allocated for tree management. But, you know, for smaller communities that are spending $10,000 to $50,000 with without having any right of way municipal code indicating that they had to take care of it, that's a fair number for a smaller community, I think. I also asked some questions about resident responsibility and willingness to care for public trees. I'm sure that any of us who have worked with the public and trying to talk to them about taking care of trees when there is no municipal code for us taking care of trees, is you end up with a lot of people that are like, well, why do I have to take care of this? This is between the street and the sidewalk. This isn't even on the inside of my private property boundary. Why would I do that? So I was curious to just hear a little bit from you all about how willing the public is to take care of these trees. And I kind of got what the feedback that I thought I'd get, which is that people were mostly unwilling. There was a small percent, there was a, you know, like 5%, one person that said, oh, people are really willing. We hardly ever have to have any municipal involvement. There was 3 respondents who said that people were moderately willing and that municipal involvement was not often needed, but maybe sometimes. And then 4 respondents who said that the majority of people must be politely prompted by a municipal worker. And this is a large part of what I do in Glenwood Springs, is politely prompting people to do things. 6 respondents noted that people were somewhat unwilling and that they'd have to maybe go beyond a forestry person or a parks person and go to code enforcement to have them talk to people about taking care of their right-of-way trees. And 3 of those respondents said code enforcement has to be used and people are just unwilling. Also, these 18 respondents were asked about whether or not they felt that an acceptable number of trees were being maintained by the public. And a majority, 56%, said, no, I don't think we're just not getting enough tree work done. 28% said, yeah, we're doing okay. And then there was 17% that were kind of unsure about this. And I wish I would have asked for a little bit more feedback regarding that. So if you happen to be one of the unsure communities, I'd love to just hear a little bit more about why you're unsure. Like, is it, you know, if it's just like based on inventory or what that is. So the other portion of respondents, 49%, which, you know, honestly, it was a really even split, 51% and 49% of communities that either do have that right-of-way tree code or don't, indicating that they have a responsibility to take care of trees. Of that 49%, there was a large percent of them were forestry, public works, and parks and recreation. We also had one natural resources department response as well here. And then I asked a question about who was maintaining crews or what kind of crews were maintaining the trees for these municipalities with the responsibility to take care of right-of-way trees. And a lot of people are hiring outside contractors to do the work. So 41% are hiring primarily outside contractors. 35% have primarily city staff, but with assistance from outside contractors. And only 18% of the respondents noted that it was primarily municipal staff. And then another small percent indicated that it was just only outside contractors. Regarding budgets, a majority of the respondents indicated that their annual budget allocations were actually below $50,000, which is interesting when you compare it to the responses of municipalities that do not have code that enforces, you know, that they have to do that. Among 17 respondents who acknowledged that they possess municipal responsibility for right-of-way trees, only 5 of them represented municipalities with populations exceeding 100,000 people. One of the respondents' municipalities had a population approaching 70,000, while the remaining 11 respondents were associated with municipalities that had populations fewer than 20,000 individuals. So that's, I think it's really interesting. We had kind of like a wide range, but the majority of a good chunk of these respondents were kind of those smaller municipalities, which doesn't surprise me considering it was the Intermountain Urban Forestry Council that did a lot of the responding. The reported budgets were, again, there was a few people that responded that had those higher budgets, not a lot, a few communities that were in that over $500,000 mark. There was about two to three communities that were between the $100,000 and $500,000 mark, and then over 50% of those communities again were below that $50,000 mark. And then Something else I found really interesting about these responses related to the departments that were responsible for tree care is that if you go back here, you can see that the departments that are reporting management of right-of-way trees, you have Forestry, Public Works, Parks and Rec. But then here you have like Forestry and Parks and Rec, but Public Works, there wasn't as much money allocated for Public Works. Even though they were kind of indicating that it was the kind of staggered a little differently. I kind of expected that to match a little bit more closely. It's not super far off, but just kind of an interesting difference. I also asked questions about making changes in responsibility. So I asked the question, if you're a municipality who went from the public residents and adjacent parcel owners taking care of right-of-way trees to a municipality that now takes care of the right-of-way trees, if you made that transition in the past 40 years, what do you think the challenges were in making that transition? 30% of the respondents said that was not a difficult transition. Another 30% said it was difficult. And then you had kind of this like really even split where it said slightly difficult. And then there was like a 14% that said it was moderately difficult. The challenges that were faced in making this transition included underestimating budgetary requirements, staffing expectation discrepancies, complications related to code revisions, and in addition to variable right-of-way zones, public resistance to work, confusion regarding tree ownership, and historic management of trees. And the historic management of right-of-way trees is something I feel like it is probably felt by a lot of the older communities. I know that we really feel it here in Glenwood Springs, where you've kind of had there was no code related to these trees before prior to 2006, I believe. And what was happening is that sometimes city departments would just come and prune trees in the right of way. And there seemed to be, there was little communication with residents about this. And so you have a lot of older residents that live in the community. They're like, well, they used to just always come prune my trees. Why aren't they doing it now? So I think that as our communities are growing, really trying to like even all of that out and iron it out can be challenging. Let's see. So in looking at the results of the study, I think that what I found is that many residents assume that the municipal authorities should shoulder the responsibility of tree care. That's why we are seeing maybe that trees are not adequately being cared for in our smaller communities and also in our larger communities. And then that assumption just inadvertently leads to lack of community engagement and stewardship activities and fostering a disconnection between residents and right-of-way tree care resources. The survey findings are indicating that municipalities that directly manage tree maintenance tend to express a higher confidence in the quality of care provided, and that the communities that rely on adjacent property owners for tree stewardship exhibited mixed reviews, often stemming from a lack of clarity regarding responsibilities and management practices. The survey results also illustrate significant challenges that municipalities face in managing right-of-way trees, such as concerning budget constraints and staffing constraints. The literature also showed that investing in staff training not only improves the quality of tree management, also enhances the community's appreciation for urban trees as a vital component of urban infrastructure. But unfortunately, many of our municipalities report feeling ill-equipped to maintain adequate tree care due to their financial and other resource limitations. So, kind of in conclusion here, considering innovating funding mechanisms and collaborative partnerships to engage tree management initiatives is really important. It can sometimes involve pursuing grants and sponsorships, as well as implementing stormwater fees or development-based banking systems. And it's important that communities allocate the resources towards the educational aspect of community forestry programming as well. Also, prioritizing effective communication with municipal departments. I think we could all definitely do a lot better at that, but it's just really hard because we all have different agendas. Some additional research that's needed is information into liability in Colorado specifically. There's not a lot of data out there that I was able to find regarding the legal responsibility of municipalities in tree failure cases in Colorado. Also, just more research on how we can improve interdepartmental communication and shared management strategies and programs. And then specifically related to the survey, I think it'd be really great to, because this is my first time sending out a survey like this, I think it'd be really great to send out an improved version of the survey and try to touch more communities with it, and extending the response window, I think, would help with that. It was a short response window this time. Also requiring that all of the questions are answered. Otherwise, you know, they're just the quality of data isn't there. And then requiring contact email addresses. It seems like a really simple thing that I missed that I wish I would have included, just to be able to reach out to people easily and ask a question, just to get a little bit more information and perspective. And then maybe also just reducing the questions down to the things that are the most important for all of us to help identify things that help us to grow. And that's all I have about the survey, but this was a really condensed version of the survey results. I have about a 40-page paper that I'm happy to share with anybody who's interested, and that actually has all of the data in the paper. I just didn't want to keep you here too long. Happy to answer any questions about it though.
Death by statistics. That was great, Heather. Yeah, I think for people to be able to see what you use the data for, and be able to see what the results were, but then also following up with requests for more data so you can keep building on this information, I think would be really interesting.
Yeah. What I was really hoping with this was to also be able to provide other communities as well as myself with resources related to that we can actually, so we have just that pocket of resources to go to city council and say, hey, here's the supporting evidence, like here's why, you know, we need the money, here's how it's going to help us long term. So that's something that this paper contains a lot of that information if anybody is interested in that.
Let's see. Chris asks the question. He says, Chris Beiser, Heather, how has the loss of the grant funding affected your program and offerings to the Glenwood Springs community? Has everything been put on hold? Has the town filled the budget gaps?
Oh, so we fortunately had, we already allocated about 100,000 for urban forestry programs. So that's just in our budget for forestry. We had planned on receiving 200,000 for 3 years through IRA funding. It is impacting what we're doing. What we're doing is we were putting things on hold. As far as our right-of-way tree care assistance project goes, it is temporarily on hold until we get a little bit more information. So the USDN and the Forest Service indicated that if we submitted our reimbursement for expenses incurred before the cutoff date on April 1st or 2nd, that we would receive that reimbursement. I don't really want to bank on it, but I'm hoping that that will be the case. So I did submit our reimbursement request. We submitted that request for a little over 200,000 actually, because we adjusted our grant narrative at the last minute when we realized all of this was happening. So to incorporate more salaries. So we're hoping that that's all going to shake out. If it doesn't, I'm going to be going back to city council at that point and presenting basically this survey research and presenting my case for why I believe we need to have more funding. And I'm going to be asking them to give me at least 150,000 a year to start for right-of-way tree care.
And then Heather, with your presentation and your report, if you send those to me, I can put them on our Google Drive so people can access them if that works for you.
Yeah.
Cool. I know the State Forest Service with our IRA grant money, and I think Sherry Fountain is still on the call, so hopefully I don't overstep anything on here. Sherry, if you need to slap my hand. We're looking at how we can allocate our IRA monies that we're not going to put out in second rounds of grant applications to see how we can support the communities that were impacted by this round of retractions of their IRA money. So we'll see how the State Forest Service can help. I know Carrie Tomlinson has been reaching out to folks like Heather. So we'll see what the state can do in the meantime. Sherry, did you want to add anything?
The Forest Service is still paying bills. If you send your invoices in, we're still paying them. They may get held up a little bit at ASC getting to us, but once they get to us, we approve them and we're still paying. So no one has been had a stop work order. So we're still moving forward with paying all of our bills.
Good.
And I'm not going to say for now, but I'm going to say that.
Still paying the bills, period.
Still paying the period.
Thanks, Sherry. Sherry is a part of the critical part of our ladder of submitting the request for reimbursement and moving it up the chain. She is our region. Shoot. I'm speaking without having all the facts. Region 2. Region 2 U.S. Forest Service person. Thank you, Sherry. Any other questions for Heather on her great research? All right, hearing none. I kind of I had on the agenda for me to do some presentation, but that was really just me padding the agenda so people didn't feel, so we didn't feel rushed. The things I just wanted to share, and then we'll go into the round robin, is one, as you all know, it's Arbor Day season and proclamation season. So I just wanted to remind everybody that you need to make sure you get your proclamation approved, and it needs to be dated for this year, 2025, and signed by the mayor or appropriate person. So I've shared this a few times in emails, but this is the checklist. See, is it sharing? So this is the checklist I put together for you. I have it set up for each field office. So the contact information in the bottom is by your field office. This is the generic one for Urban Forge for our people who fall through the cracks. But anyway, it's really a checklist to make sure as you go through the season, making sure you get everything you need in order to fill out your application in the fall. so you're not scrambling for data. But really make sure that you're getting that, that proclamation done and it's signed and dated, and then taking photos of Arbor Day. Because one of the requirements for the Tree City USA is to submit proof that Arbor Day was celebrated. There's no requirements of what Arbor Day looks like. It just needs to be some event. It can be a poster contest, it can be a tree planting with staff, it can be a whole thing like the City of Grand Junction does with the Southwest Arbor Fest, where we give out seedlings and have silent auctions and do tree plantings, and it's the big thing. Or it can be something really small and basic. I think, Heather, you guys usually hand out baby seedlings at your farmer's market.
So we do an Arbor Day tree giveaway event. So we hand out,
Oh, nice.
we actually distribute trees through Colorado Tree Coalition.
Mm.
And we go through this process. It's a little labor intensive, but we have people register through Eventbrite, and we tell them that part of the requirement to receive a fairly large size tree, like because it's like inch to inch and a half trees.
Yeah, the Trees Across Colorado program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we basically they have to do a consultation with us. So we actually look at their property. We ask them, where are you hoping to plant this tree? And then we help to select a species from that list that we get for the location they're hoping to plant in, or help them find a better location first before they can receive a tree.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's see, that's being delivered this week. Tomorrow is the Trees Across Colorado delivery. Chris, are you getting some too in Basalt? Nice.
Yeah, a smaller order this year, but we also actually met a guy at a bar last year that was starting up a farm in Montrose, and so he's growing 200 ponderosa saplings for me to give away this year. So that's finally stepping up our Arbor Day game in Basalt.
That's
Heather,
awesome.
are you sure on the date? You're kind of making me panic mildly. I thought it was on Thursday. I don't know if Glenwood Springs is tomorrow.
Sorry, what was?
Are you sure of the date? It's on the delivery for the trees.
Oh, I thought I had an email from Gertie that said it was tomorrow.
It's definitely tomorrow for Glenwood Springs.
Okay, it might just be for you guys up in the mountains tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone has different truck.
I know, yeah, but you made me panic mildly. I'm like, it's gonna be tomorrow.
Yeah.
Thanks.
No problem.
So yeah, just reminding everybody about the Arbor Day and making sure that you take some photos and then just like label them. So like I submit the application for the tree campus for Colorado Mesa University. And so when I get the photos, I put them in a folder and I label them clearly so that when I have to submit my application, that I know exactly where they are. So it helps to do a little planning and organization right now as you're collecting data so that it's a seamless procedure of getting your application done. I do have a call scheduled with the Arbor Day Foundation next month to talk about the application. One of the questions that we wanted changed was to be able to send the boxes of goodies to more specific addresses than just the address that's listed in the application. Does anyone who submits Tree Studio applications have any comments besides just that it's a little bit of a pain in the ass? But besides that, is there anything that you would think that could be tweaked to make it better for processing and doing the application? Anyone want to share thoughts that I could take to the Arbor Day Foundation?
I actually had a comment about the stuff they send every year.
Yeah,
It's a little bit. I like their new logo, but I received this 8x10 sticker this year, and I'm honestly not sure where it's intended to be put. I mean, this is like the size of a sign at this point.
Yeah.
Does anybody know where?
I even opened up my Colorado Mesa one, so maybe I should see what's in here.
It's a cool sticker, but it's a hard sell to slap on the front of Town Hall's door. I've got the small one on there. I was just curious if anybody had it. fun places they've been putting those.
Good question. We got a plaque and everything in this one. Oh, it must be it's a blank plaque to put our little year stickers on there. And a flag. It's like an unboxing YouTube channel. We didn't get a big one in the tree campus, the big sticker. We did get our little it is a new logo with their hat. It's different than it has been.
We're still recording, Cami, so it can be an unboxing video that'll go viral.
That's right. I'll make some money off YouTube with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I usually keep the round robin on because I think people like, if they have time, they want to hear maybe some of the conversations, but it's a good point, Allison.
Yep.
The other thing I wanted to share real quick before we do the round robin was that I did do some updating with Planet Geo on tree, Colorado Tree View. So I'm going to share my screen again. So this is the town of Paonia. So what I did, working with Planet Geo, was update the way the inventory data collection looks. My thought process is, if you're using this and collecting new data, you're working your way through the tree tabs as you're collecting data. So you're not jumping around with what tab you needed to be on. So you start with the location information, then you go to the tree information, then you go to management, and then risk. And then what I did add was a new one called Tree Checkup. And this is kind of more intended towards one volunteer using it. So they go directly to this tab to update newly planted trees, but it doesn't have to be for volunteers. It could be just you've planted a new tree because it's Arbor Day, or like Heather, you have your own Planet Geo tree plotter system, but somebody who's like doing a lot of plantings on private properties where you just want to go quickly make sure the tree is doing okay, then you could go to this tree checkup, and it's really specific for like newly planted trees. Is the mulch okay? Is the general health okay? Does the staking, is it working? Does it need to be removed? Is there caging? Because some communities have deer problems or people problems. Pruning, trunk wrapping, if there's any changes to ground cover, kind of specifically thinking about the new legislation that's going around about removing unused turf. So if they're removing turf, are they still making sure the tree is being cared for? And then general needs. So I created this to help with volunteers to move through it quickly. And we did add a volunteer tier. So the volunteer tier, you can have somebody sign up to have access to your community's database, but they are not able to delete a tree or mass update or use it offline. But that was always my biggest concern by giving people the access to a community's tree data, was that they might accidentally delete trees. And so what I need to do is probably in this location information one, add a checkbox that says remove tree point, so that the person who's managing the trees, like Carl and Carbondale, knows, okay, my person went to this tree, my volunteer went to this tree, it's no longer there. We're not going to replace it. We need to remove the tree point altogether. And then Carl has that ability to remove that tree point. So that's some of the updates we are making to Co-Tree View. There is a history button, and with inspections, I need to work with the staff at Planet Geo and set an appointment so I can understand exactly how this works. But this is something, if you do inspections using their module, it tracks what was entered previously, versus just kind of like a lot of this data is like whatever you have entered in there is what's in there. There's no tracking of previous data. One of the other things I was thinking was adding a DBH of like a previous DBH and the current DBH so that you could do at least tracking of the DBH as the tree increases, but I don't want to keep adding too many questions and making this too cumbersome. So if anyone is using Coach Review and wants to provide me any feedback, happy to receive it. Planet Geo has been great to work with making these updates. So the last thing I wanted to share was that Vince Urbina was awarded the Colorado Tree Coalition's Lifetime Achievement Award. And we will be presenting that at City Council meeting tomorrow in Grand Junction, along with our proclamation in front of City Council. Vince's wife will be there, Gail, but just wanted to let you know that Vince was awarded by the CTC the Lifetime Achievement Award. So pretty excited to be able to provide him that, including a plaque that's made out of wood that we'll be able to present to Gail. So thank you to the.
Here's your plaque, Cammy.
There it is. The proof is in the pudding. What is it? Can you read what it says, Rob? So people can.
It's a lot of words, Cammy.
You can do it.
All right. In honor of Vince's lifelong dedication to Colorado's urban forests, for over 50 years, he strengthened community forest through his work with the Colorado State Forest Service, leadership on the Grand Junction Tree Board, mentorship of countless community and urban foresters, and engagement of youth in tree planting events. His passion inspired many to plant and care for trees, leaving a lasting legacy. He is profoundly missed by all who knew him 2024.
Awesome. Thanks. And thanks to Allison for getting that put together, and Thaddeus with the State Forest Service for creating the leaf and the wood.
Yeah, actually the leaf in the wood was made by David Merriman with Arborscape. So
Okay.
yeah,
Awesome. You did it.
Thaddeus did the laser writing stuff. I don't know what it's all called, but yeah.
The laser engraving. So that's exciting. That's we can remember Vince. I put a little PowerPoint together that we'll present in front of the City Council tomorrow. So that's my round table update. Remember, if nobody speaks up, I will start calling on names. So please, we got 20 minutes left in order to get our 2 CEUs. So please share if anything you want to share about Arbor Day or what's going on in your community. If you have questions, if you want feedback, the point of this is just to have conversations.
I have some updates, Cammy.
Please.
So the Arbor Day poster contest submissions are on display at DBG in the Helen Fowler Library from today until May 16th.
And that's the Denver Botanic Garden for those of us who.
Yeah, so hopefully some of you can make the trip down the mountain to come check it out. We had several submissions from many of your communities, including Glenwood Springs. I think we had like 5 from Fruta. So I don't know if Anthony had anything to do with that, but thank you. And where else? Just tons of them. I have a whole map that I could share with everybody in the chat, but thank you if you had any involvement in promoting the contest. We're really pleased that we had 6 more submissions than last year. So 40.
And the theme was different this year. What was the theme?
The theme was the superpowers of trees.
And there were some really cute posters with that theme.
Yeah, so one of the cool things about this year's contest is that we expanded the prizes to 2nd and 3rd place, and we had budget because the winners are from the Front Range area, so we won't have to pay for any travel or lodging expenses for the winner. So those additional funds will go to honoring a student from Lamar and a homeschool student from Castle Rock. So just acknowledging the artwork of more and more kids. And then I know I'm talking to the wrong crowd, but maybe some of you are secretly into Instagram, but we'll be doing some voting on Instagram for voting for your favorites. So feel free to check that out, or at least share it with your communities. kiddos that might be interested in that sort of thing. And I think that's all I have for our Arbority poster contest.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I had a thought, but anyway, so thank you, Allison, for that. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. They had some ties, so they sent an email out of the posters that so we could vote on them, and it was really hard. So I don't know if I think Eagle was one that sent in posters in the past, so might be that other community. All right, who else wants to share? Neil, you have any CTC champion tree updates for us? So you under the
There we
spot.
go.
Yep, you're
Well, yes, yeah, I got a few things. You mentioned Tree View, and I'm working on your list. I'm up through most of the maples in alphabetical order of trees. So what, maybe about halfway through or so. And that's the number ones and one tied trees, of which there are, holy cow, 300, 350 trees, something like that. So making progress, but got a ways to go. But that's been a fun adventure. Since I got a new computer, I can actually use Google Earth quickly, which helps a ton. So that's been fun. I think I have most all the champion tree certificates passed out. I got a couple for Fairmont Cemetery in Denver. I'm going to try and work with them to get maybe some more grants for them regarding tree care and planting and maintenance, and maybe updating their brochure or doing a QR code or something or other. They've been a little bit resistant, but I'm hoping to twist their arm a little bit, and Dr. Klett will hopefully be joining me, and maybe we can do a little arm twisting. I don't know. It should be interesting to hear what they say. I was up, let's see, last week up in Greeley after our CTC board meeting. I went over to Greeley and met with Jeff, one of the arborists on Greeley Forestry, and we checked out a number of trees, mostly on campus, and then some around in the city, so I can update some of those as well. So, and then we got, of course, the tree unloading Thursday, and I got some trees to plant on from Denver Digs, and so been busy.
Thanks, Neil. Yeah, right now, if you go to Tree View, the champion tree section, if you're looking at the trees, is empty. We realized that a lot of the trees were missing their lat longs, and Tree View wants the lat longs a certain way. So Neil is having a great time learning how lat and longs work and transferring them from decimals to minutes. And it's been, I'm sure, just a joy for him. It's a big chunk. So he's focusing just on the number 1 and 2 trees, and then we'll expand to the rest, because Neil is an overachiever and has a very long list of trees that he tracks.
Well, we'll hopefully continue to do so, and visiting different, we hope to make a trip over to Western Slope sometime this year, and talk with some city foresters, and of course take a look and try and measure a bunch more champ trees.
Well, you better let me know when you're here.
All right.
Who else? Susan, you want to share?
Yeah, I just put something in chat. I was asked to help review a statewide turf replacement guide, and they had kind of forgotten about trees. So if you look now, there's 86 mentions of trees. So it's been updated and talks about how to be careful about removing grass around your trees and making sure you're watering and all those fun things. So and if you are familiar with Resource Central and Garden in the Box, they're now sold out for spring, but I had designed a garden that was meant for the tree lawn area. Again, just trying to be cognizant of removing grass and putting other trees or other plants in around the trees.
Yeah, that Resource Central is a Boulder-based company.
Yeah, Boulder-based nonprofit, and
Yeah, so
they
that's
went
cool that it's Colorado
statewide
based.
this year with their low water plant gardens.
And a lot of quite a few water providers were provided a discount for their people. So like I'm in
Yes.
Water, and so they provided a $25 discount, and I did purchase my garden in a box, and I chose Susan's selection. It's quite
No,
beautiful.
thank you.
So they're coming for pickup in May, so I'm excited.
Yeah, I was
an
like
interesting group.
Yeah, they're hopefully doing good work. They're a part of the Colorado Waterwise Board, which I'm also a member now too, representing the Western Slope.
Yay.
So
Good.
yeah, so hopefully we can, keep trees in mind when people are removing the turf.
Yes, very important. Looks like Stephanie with Book Cliff Gardens had a comment about dates. So yeah, I think we're celebrating Grand Junction, celebrating Arbor Day on the 26th. I think, is it the National that's on the 25th and Colorado's is on the 18th? Is that right? My calendar doesn't include that information in my office. Does anyone remember?
That's correct.
Thank you. And then she asked, does the nursery side, does the extension office have any handouts we can print? Stephanie, let's chat about what kind of handouts you're looking for, because that's part of the thing that I like to help out with is figuring out what handouts are needed and help create those. So I'll reach out to you, or you can give me a call and we can talk about what kind of documents you're looking for. David, please go.
Okay, everybody, I don't know, I'm up on video too. If you can hear me, so I'm the CTC grant manager and also the treasurer. I just wanted to do a shout out, first of all, especially to Sherry and all the federal employees and all the CSF employees for just hanging in there in this incredibly difficult time. At the CTC, we're gonna try to fill in some of the things that may have been lost with federal grants or uncertainty and stuff. So we're gonna be going to year-round grant applications, hopefully relatively small amounts, and aimed at smaller communities. So you can kind of look for that. I'm gonna try to get something in the Colorado Municipal League, but it will be year-round applications. We'll try to get some fall projects together. I have always, working for a relatively large city, I've always thought in CTC, what we really need to do is reach out to the smaller communities around us. So for those of you that work for cities out west or anywhere in the state that have great forestry programs or even 1 or 2 employees, if we can reach out to those small towns around there just to get them going, maybe with planting things or management or inventories and things like that. So what we're trying to do is sort of at a grassroots level, kind of pick up some of the slack. You should look for that in the next couple of weeks, and anytime you want to send me an email, whatever, feel free to do so.
Yeah, I'm excited about the year-round grant. I think that'll be really helpful and maybe not so much of a bigger workload for the volunteers at the CTC.
Sure.
Let's see. Who else has something to share with us? We got 10 minutes left. Doug.
I just have a question for Rob. What was your seed source for the hickories you're getting away? Local?
That is a Scott Skogerbo special. I get the stories from him. I'd have to look. I usually jot down notes. If you wanted me to, I could email you what he sent me. A lot of things, he's got the story of where they came from, and then he's selecting out of Fort Collins from a lot of his seed source. But I, over the years, going back to the late 90s, working for Fort Collins Nursery, have learned to just rely on Scott being a really good source of trees. So I tend to trust the things he grows and give him a shot here. So it's not a great answer, but
Hey, I could throw in something on that, Rob.
there
Is
you go,
what we're
Ross. Thank
hoping
you.
for. Well, what we're hoping for also to see this year is an app that basically documents where those seeds come from. And my goal is to just give that dang thing to Scott and let him go hit the road and start collecting these things right at the source and recording it. So this platform actually would be able to record and inventory a tree within like 30 seconds, like just the basic information and the geo points and everything, like where it comes from. And that's my goal to give to Scott, because man, that guy has too much knowledge to be letting go, as a retired person or beyond, So hopefully in the future we can really have hard data on that stuff.
My follow-up was just in the fact, I know you're trying to collect as much seed locally. I've not seen anything in the hickories in the valleys. And if there's like, oh yeah, that's the tree over there on 3rd Street or something, just, I'm convinced that a lot of the nut trees would do better or do well here, but haven't seen any of the hickories yet.
We did pecans from Scott in like 2001, and I put a couple at my house, and they're doing really well. So sometimes you got to try them. I don't know. I like the Arbor Day distribution because you can just kind of test new things on a larger scale and just see how they do. You can get some feedback.
Exactly. Thanks.
It would be my dream in the future to have budgeting, and all the municipalities would be able to have those seed collectors go out and collect and then send back to whatever nursery, they need to send stuff to, and then have it grown out and then, repurchased. But yeah.
I shared the list of what seedlings we're giving away at the Junctions Arbor Day with the write-ups. If anyone wants to check that out.
You should note that I heard yesterday that all of the Mexican blue oaks are not coming. So we only had a small number of them, but they did not overwinter well, he said.
Okay.
So that's a disappointment on my end, but I was kind of hoping to try one.
Go ahead, Heather.
Kimmy, the document how to properly plant a tree for large container trees, I'm gonna put it in the chat here. Is this the one you guys have that's like the most up to date for container tree planting? It's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
that is the most up to date. And if anyone sees anything that could be tweaked or improved on it, love to get feedback. But we put that together a couple years ago that had like really detailed photos for people. And then we just created one for seedling trees. I'm not sure if it's even been published yet. Molly Freilisher with Extension here in Tri-River, and I put together a handout on how to take care of the baby seedlings, either by how to plant them directly into the ground or to pot them up. And I did put together a handout on potting up for people to use.
Yeah, these are really helpful. Thank you so much. What I like to do at our Arbor Day event is like I print a few of them out to have them on hand, and then I'll just have like one little laminated sheet with a QR code that goes straight to it.
Cool. Yes.
Paper.
That's awesome to hear. What we do with the Junction Arbor Day is we have, how many silent auction trees do we have, Rob?
We will do 50.
And so we do 4 or 5 batches of people right?
Yep. Yeah. 5 rounds.
5 rounds where people can win a silent auction tree, and before they can pay, even just pay, they have to watch a demo of how to properly plant the tree. And then they get the handout as well, because we know how people are. So that's what we started doing. And we definitely have seen an improvement of just education. Adam, you just added a link. Do you want to share?
Yeah, I'd be remiss as a state Forest Service employee if I didn't point out that our annual forest health report came out last week. So it's obviously more of the mountainous terrain. So that link has all sorts of stuff. You can zoom around in on it, look at focus areas of the state, and an idea for when you have people that have gone up in the mountains, and since you deal with trees, they're going to ask you what the heck was wrong with the trees up there. And then just as an update for Andy Rice, because he couldn't make it today, the city has put out their RFP for a project manager for the IRA grant. So I'll drop that link in there. I don't recall when the heck it closes or anything, but moving forwards with ordering some trees, mostly from Super Trees, for plantings that will be in June. And then our Arbor Day celebration will actually city proclamation tomorrow evening, and the tree planting will be the following Friday afternoon. So good events going on. Monte Vista has something, Saguache has something in the next few weeks as well. So plenty of activities as it's warming up down here.
Thanks, Adam. I have the it on my desk today, and my husband will be thrilled to know that he has made the front cover of the document. At least I make him turn around. I want to see your face. Turn around. Looks more interesting that way. Let's see. Who did I want to pick on? Aaron, how is it going over in Super Trees world?
It's going well over here. Yeah, just getting ready for the TAC trucks. I think Dave and I are each going to go out tomorrow to the different drop sites, help with some unloading there. Yeah, spring is popping. Everything is, leafing out here now, and definitely getting into our busy time.
What are some of your favorite species that you are seeing out of your trees this year?
I always love the ivory silks. They pop pretty early. That's definitely one of my favorites. Let me see what I'm seeing outside of my window here. Yeah, the spring snows and the chanticleers are always nice over here too. But a little bit of everything.
Is the ivory silk the Japanese lilac?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are so pretty. All right. If anyone else would like to add anything, we've made it 2 minutes to spare.
I got a fun one.
Please.
Actually, I just received it yesterday, but about 2.5 years ago, I applied for a NASA Artemis mission moon tree, and we were selected with the town, and I worked with the elementary school here, and then we got a fir tree showed up at my door yesterday that's going to be planted.
Oh my gosh.
Arbor Day events. So that was kind of a fun little educational aspect program that we're going to be a part of.
So it's what kind of, you said a fir tree?
It is one of our Douglas fir trees.
Okay.
And it was grown in a nursery at one of their nurseries in Idaho. That was hopefully will be halfway well acclimated to our area. They almost sent us a sweet gum tree last year, and I was like, no, like that would be a mistake. But yeah, I actually thought that the program was going to be defunded because everything else has been defunded as of late, and it showed up at my door yesterday, which is fun.
Just not yet, maybe. Will you send photos to us, and I can share them in one of our updates?
Yeah, I'll be getting some good social media and documentation for both the Tree City application at the end of the year as well as for our own uses. So I'll send those along.
I'll point out that Adam made a terrible dad joke in the comments.
a true moonshot. It's taken a lot of back and forth with talking to people at NASA, which makes me feel weirdly important. But they're just as slow at responding to emails as any other federal agency. So, and I've talked to it changed over hands multiple times through this program. So, yeah, it's going to be a cool little experience.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you for sharing. All right. Well, that concludes our April meeting. July will be next. And if anyone has any thoughts on presentation topics, please reach out to me. And if you're a certified arborist, I will be submitting your CEUs up the line to ISA. So thank you everyone for coming, and to our presenters for their great presentations today. Thank you. See ya.